Alrighty. Good evening. Um, I'm live. Hey, I'm a day late, but anyway, it's a start. Um, I think today probably won't be a long stream. Um, it's more of just getting comfortable with how to stream again, and then also, yeah, like setup, um, stuff like that. So pretty much what we're doing is we are following along um, with this tutorial, which is Unreal Engine 5 Beginner Tutorial, UE5 Starter Course from, this is a couple of years old, done by Unreal Sensei. So the link is in the description. I'll just do that. Yeah, I'll do theater mode. So yeah, this dude's pretty good. I've kind of started this tutorial before a while ago. Starting it again, pretty much fresh. So I'm gonna run through it. I've kind of set it up a little bit already. But anyway, we'll give it a. This is 5 hours long, so it's going to take me a few streams to kind of get through. Yeah. Now, give me a moment. I'm just going to shut a window because I think some breeze is coming through. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, we'll get cracking. Hopefully, the audio is going to be all right. We'll see what happens. So we'll hit kind of
If you are
play.
completely new to Unreal Engine 5, then this tutorial was made for you. In this tutorial, you will go from knowing nothing about Unreal Engine 5 to creating this beautiful world you see right here.
Yeah, so this is
Now,
the
I know
example.
this might look intimidating, but do not worry. Every step in this process, from sculpting the landscape to creating the castle, will be shown in detail. This video is pretty long, but that's because Unreal Engine 5 is a big program, and we have a lot to cover. To help navigate this video, I divided it up into individual chapters. You can find links to all the chapters in the description below. In this tutorial, you will learn how to install Unreal Engine 5 and create a project, how to navigate and move objects in your 3D world, create materials, and import 3D models, go over Unreal's amazing new dynamic lighting system called Lumen, sculpt.
Yeah, so this is using Unreal Engine 5.0. I think they're up to like 5.5 from memory. So we've got a bit of catching up to do. But anyway, this is a good starting point.
Landscapes and paint foliage, download free nanite objects from the Megascans library, and finally we will briefly go over how to program a game using blueprints, and at the end, create the fantasy environment you see right here. I know learning Unreal Engine 5 can be tough at first,
So
which is
that's the
why
caper.
each chapter in this video can be treated as its own self-contained lesson. So if you're ever stuck on something, you can always go back in the video and re-watch that chapter. Also, all the assets I use in this video are completely free, so you can follow along with me. Now, with all that being said, let's jump into UE5. To begin, before we
Yeah, so I kind of mute this and kind of I've done all this section here while it's kind of yapping away. So it should be interesting. So yeah, I think it's like 5.5. Um, So yeah, the plan is to kind of go through this tutorial. He did talk about there's a section there for creating a game. Um, that's not what I am setting out to do. Well, not yet, anyway. So it's more about the world creation, and then we'll go into some animations down the track. But this is kind of the whole process is to learn how to do it, and yeah, kind of see how we go. Um, so yeah, he's just doing the whole kind of setup at the moment. Um, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the user interface, but by all means, as I said, the link to this video is in the description. So if anyone's kind of keen to check it out, um, they can. They can if they find it somewhat interesting. If anyone's kind of starts watching this and is new to Unreal Engine, he does do courses, and they're a couple $100, which I've looked at the website. It looks pretty interesting. But yeah, maybe one day when I get some spare cash to throw around. But we will see what happens. We will see. What's he?
At blueprints, since we're not going to be going over C++ coding in this video. And down here, I want to make sure starter content is enabled. Starter content will give us some nice assets that we can play with to help us learn Unreal Engine 5. Below that is ray tracing. We're not going to go over ray tracing.
I just wanted to see if I actually did that, so I might actually launch. I should have been paying attention. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, so if we go main monitor, we go. Oh no, I've already done that. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we're doing there at the moment.
Just yet. And of course, to create this project, let's click on create. So this is what you should see when opening up Unreal Engine for the first time. Don't worry, we're going to go over what all these different windows and buttons do in just a second.
Opening it up
Before
now.
that, I want to go over how Unreal Engine stores projects. So let's exit out of this project, and we can see that a brand new folder was created on our desktop. Remember, I selected my desktop as the place to save our project. Essentially, this folder contains all the data that makes up our project.
Oh, where did I save
whenever
that?
we make a change in our project or we create something in the project, it's going to be stored right here. Now, to open up our project again, all you have to do is double click on the .u project asset right
Where
there.
did I actually
and
save
open
this?
up your project from
where did I actually save this project? Do 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 do. Oh yeah, no, I've got it in. I've got it in on my secondary storage. That's cool. I know where it is now.
where you last saved it.
Sweet.
To begin, let's briefly go over how to navigate the user interface and what all these different windows do. So probably the window that sticks out the most is the viewport right here.
Yeah, that one there
is essentially just a view into our 3D world that we're creating. So, for example, we can fly around and look at our world. We can even grab.
So what I have found, I was kind of screwing around yesterday, is that, which I found out a while ago, is you can use an Xbox controller to kind of zoom around the interface. And I was like, oh, how do you kind of? Because I'm useless at keyboards. But what you can do is the L trigger, LT and RT is up and down, which makes it handy just to kind of reposition. Otherwise, you kind of like Yeah, using Joy-Con. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's going to be handy. So that's the caper of it. So back to old mate.
Objects and manipulate them all within the 3D viewport. Now, don't worry, we are going to go over camera controls and how to move objects in just a bit, but I first want to go
So
over
that's
what
using my
these
mouse.
windows do. Right above the viewport is the toolbar. The toolbar is pretty important because it's where we get a lot of our tools and a lot of different buttons we're going to be
Oh,
continually pressing. For example, what if I want to add an object into our world? Then I can click on the plus icon and scroll down to shapes
I
and
got to remember
maybe
to
add in
flick
a
between.
sphere and place it in the world to move it around. I can also switch modes. So right now I'm in select mode, which is the main mode where we can move objects around. Let's say if I'm making a landscape, I can go into landscaping mode and create a landscape.
So that's up
Or
there.
I can go into foliage mode and start to paint foliage if I do have those assets. If you are curious, we are going to go over both modes later in the video. Now to the right of that, we have the outliner. The outliner is essentially a list of all the objects that make up my current world. So for example, if I want to select a chair, but the chair isn't in my view right now within the outliner, I can select the chair right there like that. I can also select multiple objects by holding down control. So maybe I want to select both chairs, just hold down control like that, and maybe also the statue right there. The outliner is also a great place to organize your world. For example, we see we have all these folders. Real quickly, if you want to create a folder, all you have to do is right click, create folder. Let's call this one my folder, and hold down control, let's select both chairs and simply drag them into there just like this. We can also hide and unhide objects. For example, maybe I want to edit something that's behind the table, but the table's in the way right now. I can come here and temporarily click on the eye icon to hide the table, and then click on the eye icon again to unhide it. And right below the world outliner, we have the details panel. The details panel is essentially where we can edit all the properties of an object that we have selected.
Yeah, cool.
For
That's
example, maybe if I don't like the scale
there.
of
I'm
this
gonna
chair
work out how
right
to do
here,
two
I
streams.
can select the chair and come to scale and maybe increase it by 2 in the Z axis, which is the vertical axis, and see that we have a really long and tall chair. Now, I don't like that edit, it looks kind of weird, so you can always press Ctrl and Z in Unreal Engine to undo anything.
Control and Z.
Now,
I've
we
got
do
a
have
cheat
one
sheet
more
as well.
default window. That's arguably the most important window since it stores everything we're doing. It stores information on the chairs, the table, even the entire world. And that is the content drawer. You can get the content drawer by going all the way down here to the bottom left hand corner and clicking on content drawer like that to bring it up. Alternatively, since this window is pretty important, you can press Control and Space at the same time to bring it up and close it. So if you press Control and Space, it's going to bring up the content drawer, and
Cool.
this gives us a folder view of all the assets that make up our project. So for example, if we want to see where this chair is being stored and maybe we want to edit the chair, then we can come under starter content, props, and right there we have sm underscore chair. If I double click on it, we can see the chair asset and make any adjustments if we do need to. Now we're going to go over the static mesh editor later, so I can exit out of this window by clicking on the X icon.
Yeah,
I'm going to
cool.
press Control and Space again to bring back my content drawer, and probably the best example I have for the content drawer is that it's like your computer's file explorer. So just like on your computer where you have folders and then those folders
He's
you have
got a
subfolders,
blender.
and those subfolders contain assets like text files or Word documents, same exact thing with the content drawer in Unreal. So you have folders, and in those folders you have subfolders, and finally you have all those assets that make up your project. So for example, here we have the
Pretty
starter
cool.
content folder, and I can go into it by double clicking like this, or I can click on it right here within the folder window. Now I could go into any of these different folders. For example, the maps folder contains the map we're currently editing. So we can see up here that this map is called minimal underscore default. Right there's minimal underscore default. We can double check that we are editing this map by double clicking on it to open it up. Let's go save. And we can see that it did open up the exact same map. Now, if I ever want to go up a folder, I can always click on here. So right now we're in the maps
Yeah,
folder.
okay.
If I want to get out of that, I can click on starter content. And if I want to get out of that, we can even go to content right there. Now, don't worry, if you don't have starter content, you can click on add and then add feature or content pack, and then go to content and simply select starter content and add a project. I'm not going to do that since we did add it when we were creating our project. As you can guess, the content drawer is a pretty big deal, and maybe you don't want to press Control and Space all the time to bring it up. You always want it docked in your layout. Well, all you have to do is click on docked in layout like this, And now your content drawer will be right here at the bottom.
Hang on, what did
And
you
notice
do?
how it's called content browser right now, not called content drawer. So whenever I say content browser and content drawer, just know that I'm talking about the same exact. And if I want to get out of that, we can even go to content right there. Now, don't worry, if you don't have starter
All right,
content, you can
document
click
layout.
on add and then add feature or content pack, and then go to
Hang on.
content and simply select starter content and add a project. I'm not going to do that since we did add it when we were creating our project. As you can guess, the content drawer is a pretty big deal, and maybe you don't want to press Control and Space all the time to bring it up. You always want it docked in your layout. Well, all you have to do is click on docked in layout like this, and now your content drawer will be right here at the bottom. And notice how it's called content browser right now, not called content drawer. So whenever I say content browser and content drawer, just know that I'm talking about the same exact thing. Now, this is great, but this tab right here is taking up a little bit of real estate. If you ever want to get rid of a tab, all you have to do is right click and click on hide tabs. If you want to get back that tab, then you can click on the very small blue triangle and that will bring back your tab. Also, tabs are great because if you left mouse button and hold, you're able to move this around and
Yeah.
dock it somewhere else. So maybe if I don't want content browser at the bottom right here, I can dock it to the side, or I can even dock it to one of the tabs right here. And now I'm able to switch in between details and the content browser. Also, if you ever want to move windows around, you can hover in between the windows and then you're able to move it down just like this to adjust exactly.
All right, I can't actually dock it.
Now, another neat trick is that if I dock my content browser right here, and let's go make it a little bit smaller, and maybe
there we go.
always visible, I can
There we go.
and
Okay, got it.
dock to sidebar. Now, whenever I want my content browser or any other window, I can just click right here, and it will show. Now, if I don't want to dock to sidebar, I can right click and unlock from sidebar just like that. Now I'm going to click on the X icon to get rid of that content browser. Alternatively, if I want to automatically dock all my windows in a sidebar except the viewport, I can click on F10, which will go into full screen mode. And now we can see that my outliner and details window and any other windows I have on the side.
How did you minimize it again? I really do need
save.
Yeah.
And we can see that it did open up the exact same map. Now, if I ever want to go up a folder, I can always click on here. So right now we're in the maps folder.
Yeah, good thing I'm going to be doing a lot of backwards and forwards.
And if I want to get out of that, we can even go to content right there.
Ugh.
Now, don't worry, if you don't have starter content, you can click on add and then add feature or content pack, and then go to content and simply select starter content and add a project. I'm not going to do that since we did add it when we were creating our project. As you can guess, the content drawer is a pretty big deal, and maybe you don't want to press Control and Space all the time to bring it up. You always want it docked in your layout. Well, all you have to do is click on docked in layout like this, and now your content drawer will be right here at the bottom. And notice how it's called content browser right now, not called content drawer. So whenever I say content browser and content drawer, just know that I'm talking about the same exact thing. Now, this is great, but this tab right here is taking up a little bit of real estate. If you ever want to get rid of a tab, all you have to do is right click and click on hide tab.
All right,
if you want to get back that tab, then you can click on the very small blue
triangle. Right click,
tab. Also, tabs are great because if you left mouse button and hold, you're able to move this around and dock it somewhere else. So maybe if I don't want content browser at the bottom right
That's
here,
what I missed.
I can
That's
dock it
what
to
I
the
missed.
side, or I can even dock it to one of the tabs right here, and now I'm able to switch in between details and the content browser. Also, if you ever want to move windows around, you can hover in between the windows, and then you're able to move it down just like this.
Yeah, easy done.
To adjust exactly how you want your user interface. Now, another neat trick is that if I dock my content browser right here, and let's go make it a little bit smaller, and maybe I don't want it always visible, I can right click and go dock to sidebar. Now, whenever I want my content browser or any other window, I can just click right here and it will show. Now, if I don't want to dock to sidebar, I can right click and unlock from sidebar just like that. Now I'm going to click on the X icon to get rid of that content browser.
All right, yeah, okay,
Alternatively, if I want to automatically dock all my windows in a sidebar except the viewport, I can click on F10, which will go into full screen mode. And now we can see that my outliner and details window and any other windows I have on the side will go into docked mode. And then I can click on F10 again to bring those windows back. So F10 is a neat shortcut to automatically dock all your windows.
See how we
Now,
go
these are
with this
just
sort
the
of stuff.
default windows. If you want to see all the windows that are available to us, we can come up to Windows and select any of these. Now, one window that we are going to be using a lot is the world settings. So world settings, as you can guess, just has a bunch of different properties and settings that we can play with to edit the map we currently have opened. Now, for example, what if we really mess up our user interface? It's basically unreadable. We have no idea what is happening. Don't worry, we can always come up to Window and all the way down here go to Load Layout and click on Default Editor Layout, which will just reset all of our windows.
Sweet.
Now that we have the very basics of the user interface out of the way, we can move on to the fun stuff, and
that will no doubt happen a fair bit with me, as I'll end up moving stuff around and get too clogged. But anyway, good stuff. What I am going to do, I go back to main monitor. I do want to add in display capture. Add the right. Make that the same size as. Yeah. So if I do, I want to do that because I want to be able to kind of play when I'm doing bits and pieces, kind of play and have it.
So how to navigate our camera around our 3D world so we can view it at all
there.
angles.
There we go.
To navigate is actually easier than you think. So
that
you
was...
want your cursor inside the viewport, and then you want to hold down the right mouse button. If you now move your mouse with the right mouse button held down, you're able to look around your scene. And still, with the right mouse button held down, you're able to use the WASD keys to move around. You can also use E and Q to go up and down. So that's E to go up, Q to go down, W to move forward, S to move backwards, and A and D to move left and right, all the while holding down the right mouse button.
You do left at the same time you go side to side, up and down.
WASD, then nothing will happen. So make sure you do hold that down. Now we can also control our camera speed. So let's say, for example, there's an object that's really far away and you want to go towards that object, but your camera is moving too slow. Well, if you come up here to the top right-hand corner and select the camera icon, you're now able to control that speed. So right now we're at 4. We can also bring this up to 6, and now we are a lot faster. And we can bring this all the way down to 1, and we can see that we are pretty slow. So let's leave it at 4, and a shortcut to access camera speed is to, of course, hold down the right mouse button and use the scroll wheel. So scroll wheel up will move faster, and scroll wheel down will move slower.
Yeah, so I do much prefer
and continually play with the camera speed if you do want to move faster.
Using...
Here's a really good tip. Let's say if you scroll really far away, so you fly.
Yeah, I much prefer using the controller
where your world is, and then you look around and you can't find.
There'll be some detail, little detail ones.
Come up to any of the objects right here. Let's say, for example, the chair. Select that, and then press the F key to focus on that object. So if you select an object, you can.
Yeah. So with focusing with using F when you select an object and hit F, that's the same in Blender and Maya as well. The good thing is, like, there's a lot of like shortcuts which are what I found in the limited usage I've had a while ago, like 2 years ago, for Blender and Maya. And also kind of poking around Unreal Engine, they're similar. So yeah.
You press F to then snap to that object.
Just so like if we go main monitor.
So that's how you're never lost in your world.
There we go.
So if you ever played any first-person
games,
you should be right at home since the muscle memory is there for the WASD keys and rotating your camera by moving your mouse.
Yeah,
now,
it's
F again.
Controller, buddy. Controller.
To an object, we can rotate around that object by holding down Alt and the left mouse button. So Alt and left mouse button allows us to rotate around a pivot object. And if we hold down Alt and hold down the right mouse button, we can zoom in and out. So right mouse button, zoom in and out.
Yes, that's handy. So on the keyboard, that's handy.
And to focus on an object, of course, you want to select it and press the F key just like beforehand. Before we move on, let's briefly go over the viewport controls. So we know the different ways that we can view our world. So up here we have perspective. Let's say if you want a top-down bird's eye view, then we could click on the perspective button and select top like this. So to control in an orthographic view mode, you want to hold down the right mouse button to pan, and of course use a scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So right mouse button pan, scroll wheel to zoom in and out. We can also view it from the side, like maybe the left side, same controls. And of course, if we want to go back into perspective, we come up here, select the button,
Yeah,
and
cool.
click on perspective. Notice how a lot of the buttons in Unreal have a shortcut right next to it. For example, perspective shortcut is Alt and
That's
G.
actually, yeah,
So instead of going all the way up here and selecting perspective in the dropdown,
I totally forgot about the perspective, because that'd be good. Just as like a 2D kind of view on a so yeah, main menu. So we go up there left. You can select them all. Cool beans.
I can just press the Alt and G key at the same time to go back into perspective. So right next to perspective is our view modes. So view modes are pretty great because they allow us to see our world in different ways. For example, maybe we don't want to see all the lights and we just want to see the colors of our world. Instead of coming up to lit, I can select unlit right there, or I can even select wireframe to see our world's edges and vertices. We will be changing our view modes a lot since it's a great way to debug our scene and see if there's anything wrong. So I'm going to come back up here to lit.
Yeah, that'd be useful.
Or the shortcuts are Alt-4 for lit, Alt-3 for unlit, and Alt-2 for wireframe. So let's jump back with Alt and 4 to get our default view. And right next to our view modes is the show flags. So show flags allow us to turn on and off different object types. For example, what if I don't want this grid right here at the bottom? Then I could come to show, let's go find where grid is, and uncheck that to hide the grid.
Yeah, cool.
Now maybe for some reason you don't want to show our static meshes, and essentially static meshes are
So
all
that's
the
it.
objects you see right here.
Up there, I'm
But with
on.
the show flags, we can uncheck static meshes, and we no longer see those
You
static
have
meshes.
nothing. You have no mesh.
Obviously, we don't want that. And if you ever mess up your show flags, you can bring back the default flags by clicking on Use Defaults. And
Yeah,
keep in
cool.
mind that we aren't deleting anything with show flags. They just help us see what we want in the viewport. And finally, this is my favorite viewport option, and that is Game View. So if we come up here and click on the button with the 3 lines, we have Game View all the way down here, and we can see that the shortcut is G. Now,
All right,
if
so
I
that's
enable Game View, we're going to see exactly what the player will see in game. So if I press G to untoggle Game View, we can see that we have all these different widgets, and we have the grid right here. And of course, the player won't see the sun widget right here, which controls the sun's rotation. Instead, if we want to see exactly what the game will see, we click on G to hide all those widgets and features that are here for us, the editor. So just know that throughout this tutorial, when you see a bunch of widgets and these widgets just disappear, that's because I toggled on Game View with the G key.
Yeah.
Now that we know how to navigate around our world, it's time to go over how to create new objects and move them around. So we're going to go over moving, scaling, and rotating objects.
Yeah.
To begin, let's go over simple movement. I'm going to press a G key to get rid of our editor widgets.
Yeah, cool. So this is going to be pretty similar to what I've used before.
And now all we see is our world. So to move an object, simply select it, and by default we get the translation or the movement gizmo. To move an object, hover over any of these arrows and hold down the left mouse button. So I'm able to move this chair around, but notice how moving the chair isn't smooth. That's because by default, snapping is turned on. Now you could turn off snapping by coming up here and unchecking the grid icon like that. So now we can smoothly move our objects around. Now I'm going to turn it back on.
Yeah,
It's important to know that Unreal uses centimeters. So right now, since there's a 10 right next to the icon,
the proper measurement,
snapping every 10 centimeters. We can change this by selecting and
so
in the drop down, let's select 100. So now it's moving every 100 centimeters, which is 1 meter. So every time this chair moves,
so that's up there.
1 meter. So that's pretty important to know. Now I'm going to uncheck
certainly
it
is
because I do want smooth movement. Next up is rotation. So to rotate your object, you want to change its gizmo. To change a gizmo, you want to select one of the buttons up here. So right now it's on translation.
Select and
Right next to it
rotate.
is rotation.
Yeah.
Now I can rotate this chair in all these different axes. We can see that rotation snapping is turned on. If I want to turn that off, then right next to translation snapping,
Yeah, okay, that's
we
what it
have
is
this
there.
icon
Okay,
right
so they've
there,
got all the
which
he's got all the snappings
and
on.
now we're no longer snapping every 10 degrees. I can press Control Z to undo all those changes. And let's go over scaling. So right next to rotation, we have scaling, and scaling works pretty similar to the rest of the gizmos. All
Yeah.
you have to do is hover over any of these squares, hold down the left mouse button, and now we're gonna scale in
Easy
that
done. Stock
exact
stock
direction.
standard stuff.
So if we want to turn off scale snapping,
Pretty
of course, just uncheck the
straightforward.
icon right there, and now we can smoothly scale. I'll press Control Z a bit because it's important to point out that if I hover my mouse not over one of the individual squares, but the one square that's connecting all of them, so the one in the middle, hold down the left mouse button, I can move my chair
Yep.
and scale it uniformly up and down. So not in any particular axis. So
Yeah,
Control Z to
cool.
undo all those.
Cool. That's
And
good
if
to
I
know.
hover over all these buttons,
The number of times you kind of go off and you accidentally just click one and your scaling goes like weird. Yeah, it kind of does suck. Done that many a times in Blender and
we
Maya.
see that there's shortcuts. So movement is W, rotation is E, and scaling is R. So that means it's W to move, E to rotate, and R to scale. So those are some of the most common shortcuts that we're going to be using consistently throughout our time in Unreal Engine. So again, one last time, it is W.
Yeah, so I'll probably stick with mouse at the moment. For moving, scaling, and rotating at this stage. Yeah, just that's kind of to get used to the UI.
U to move, E to rotate, and R to scale. I also want to point out that if we want to move our object in the direction of our object, then come up to this little globe icon, select it. That's how it's now a square. And we can see that we're now able to move the object in that object's direction. So move it locally instead of globally. If we want to switch it back to global, then click the square icon again to make it a globe. And now we're moving it in the direction of the world and not that individual object. It's also important to point out that if I press W to get our translation widget, and if I hover over the square that's in between the different axes, I'm able to lock it and move it only in those two axes. So if I hover in between the Y and X axis, I'm just moving it in between those and not in the Z axis. I can also lock it in between the Z and Y axis, just like this. So let's press Control and Z to undo those changes. Now you're probably wondering, how do we create an object in our world? Well, there's a couple ways. Number one is that we can duplicate an object. So with any object selected, for example, this statue, if I press Control and D, then we just duplicate that object. Now, we didn't notice a change. That's because it duplicated it in the same spot as the original object. So if I hold down the left mouse button and move it out of the way, we can see that we did duplicate that object. And within the outliner,
So what's he
there's now
done?
a new object called statue square icon again to make it a globe. And now we're moving it in the direction of the world and not that individual object. It's also important to point out that if I press W to get our translation widget, and if I hover over the square that's in between the different axes, I'm able to lock it and move it only in those two axes.
Yeah.
So if I hover in between the Y and X axis, I'm just moving it in between those and not in the Z axis. I can also lock it in between the Z and Y axis, just like this. So let's press Control and Z to undo those changes. Now you're probably wondering, how do we create an object in our world? Well, there's a couple ways. Number one is that we can duplicate an object. So with any object selected, for example, this statue, if I press Control and D, then we just duplicate that object. Now, we didn't notice a change. That's because it duplicated it in the same spot as the original object.
There you go. Control
so if
D.
I hold down the left mouse button and move it out of the way, we can see that we did duplicate that object. And within the outliner, there's now a new object called statue 2, which is a copy of the original statue. So let's delete statue 2. And there is an easier way to duplicate. And this is the way I duplicate. And that is hovering over an arrow with a translation widget selected and holding down Alt and left mouse button. So hold down both of those and simply drag. And now we're able to easily duplicate and drag an object away. So let's press Ctrl Z to undo all
Alt
those
and
changes.
drag. Yeah.
Now
Ooh.
another way to
That's
create an
handy.
object is by using the Add tool up here in the toolbar. So for example, let's click on Add and let's come all the way down here to Shapes, and maybe we want to drag in a sphere. So we drag it in like this, or we can even add in a light, like a point light, and we're able to drag it around in our scene. So
Yeah,
let's
cool.
go delete those. And finally, the last way to add an object is through the content browser. So let's bring up the browser by holding down Control and Space at the same time, pressing both of those.
Yeah.
And let's go into props. And to add an object into the content browser, hold down the left mouse button and drag it into your world. For example, this couch. So let's go move it.
Yeah, okay. You can just drag that up.
Like
yeah,
this.
cool.
And now we have a brand new object. So by holding down Shift, you can select multiple objects. So for example, if I have my chair on the left selected, and I want to select a chair on the right, if I hold down Shift, now I have them both selected. If I hold down Shift again, I can add in the table and the statue. Now, if I want to deselect an item, all I have to do is hold down Control and click on any items to deselect them. Now, all we have is the statue.
Okay, cool.
And the left chair selected. And here's another tip. If I have the chair selected, hold down Alt and the left mouse button to drag out a new chair. Let's say if I want to drag this chair all the way over there, then I'm going to have to drag it across the screen, move my camera, drag it across my screen again, and it's just a huge hassle. Another way I can do it is by holding down the Shift while I'm dragging. So I hold down the left mouse button on one of these arrows, and I want to lock my camera to the object.
So that locks it.
Simply
Yeah,
hold down Shift,
handy.
And you're able to lock a camera to an object, which can save on a lot of time. So I'm going to press delete, and let's create a very simple scene just to get a hang of all the controls. So to begin, I want to hold down Shift, and let's select these two chairs, hold down Alt, and duplicate them out. So let go, hold down Alt and left mouse button again, Alt and left mouse button again. Now let's go rotate some of these chairs. That's how they're facing inwards. So select a chair, press E to get the rotation gizmo up, and have them all face inside.
Shift.
Just like this.
Oh, I'm going to do Alt.
Again, it doesn't have
Control,
to be
or is it
perfect because we're just trying to get used to the controls at this point.
Alt? Yeah.
And then I'm going to select the table, press R to scale it, and I want to elongate the table just a little bit, maybe even in its x-axis. Press E again. Let's rotate this. Press W. Move it into the middle right there. Select the chair. Hold down Shift. Let's select the other chair.
I don't want to move it. I want to scale.
And move them all in. Let's select the statue. Move it into the middle.
Rotate.
Scale this up. And maybe add some lamps on both sides of the table. So press Control and Space. Within our content, starter content, and props, we have this SM_lamp ceiling. If I drag it in, this is exactly what I want, but right now it's in the opposite direction. So I want this to be placed on the ground. I can press E,
so can you
rotate this and try
LB
to
and
180
RB.
degrees.
Zoom
I
out,
can
zoom
press
in.
Control Z and re-enable snapping for rotation right here, and rotate it exactly -180 degrees, which is what I want. So press W and let's move it. That's how it's directly placed against the ground, like right here. So I could try to guess exactly where it is, or I could snap any object I have selected to the object that's directly below it by pressing the end key. So that's END, not the end letter. So press END, end, and snap it there just like that. So press R again, scale this up in the Z axis, hold down Alt, and drag it in both the Y.
Yeah, so how's...
Maybe add some lamps on both sides of the table. So press Control and Space. Within our content, starter content, and props, we have this SM_lamp ceiling. If I drag it in, this is exactly what I want, but right now it's in the opposite direction. So I want this to be placed on the ground. I can press E, rotate this, and try to get to 180 degrees. Or I can press Control Z and re-enable snapping for rotation right here and rotate it exactly negative 180 degrees, which is what I want. So press W and let's move it. That's how it's directly placed against the ground, like right here. So I could try to guess exactly where it is, or I could snap any object I have selected to the object that's directly below it by pressing the end key. So that's END, not the end letter. So press END, end, and snap it there just like that. So press
Yeah,
R
okay.
again, scale this up in the Z axis, hold down
Um,
Alt, and
that's
drag it in both the Y and X axis. Right there like this. Let's hold down Shift again and drag both of those across
yeah, okay. So end is
our
shift.
world just like that. And I would say congratulations, you now have a very, very simple level. This is definitely not the best map, but it is pretty good as a first level. Now that you've finished your first level, it's time to move on to the post-process volume.
Yeah,
So we're gonna
sweet.
go over how we can change this.
All right. So that's probably where I'll leave it tonight. That was pretty kind of basic, kind of 45-minute stream. I'll practice this. I'll be practicing all this stuff on my weekends. So I'll save that. It's good to know. So yeah, that will be this evening. I will be back tomorrow evening, probably a little bit earlier. I'll probably keep these streams to start off with kind of like 45 minutes. How was that? So that 45 minutes did half an hour. Yeah, so tomorrow, what have we got? If I kind of go right monitor. So post process and camera exposure, intro to materials, PBR explained, textures. So if we kind of get to textures, I think tomorrow night, and then Thursday materials, yeah, or we do intro to materials, PBR, textures. So yeah, if I can get up to tomorrow, probably a bit longer. If I can get up to creating master materials, which is there, because at least then that we will go. The next one will be import create static mesh. Move. Or do we do textures and then we go material parameters, static mesh, move asset. Because then we go lighting. Lighting. I kind of want lighting to be its own. Yeah. Somewhere through here we'll kind of split it through, then we'll spend a stream doing lighting. Because lighting's a fair bit to it. And then we kind of jump into landscapes and mega scan. And there's foliage. Because yeah, if we do what's tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If I can get up to lighting by Friday, I'll be happy. I think that's where we want to be. And then kind of jump into landscaping next week. Yeah, so if I do lighting, landscape next week, kind of be someone with landscape next week. I think that's where we want to be. I think that's a pretty good kind of setup. I'm digging. To be honest, I was nervous about starting the series, hence why it's taken me so long to jump in. Kind of made every excuse under the book, but I'll kind of, yeah, Friday's my video the week out, and I think that'll be pretty interesting. Um, so yeah, everyone that kind of watches this stream back, if you do, thank you so much. Yeah, till the next one, we'll see what happens. But yeah, thank you all for, if you do go back and watch this. Thank you. If you like what you see, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and the like button, leave a comment, all that type of stuff. Would be muchly appreciated. Until tomorrow, guys, stay safe. Enjoy.